Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. And today I want to talk about a subject that's been talked about in a lot of the live streams with Mangini and Dave Blue Jacket. And I also talked on a live stream about it, and I shared an example. And I just kind of want to focus a little bit more on that. And what I basically want to talk about are cards that are soaked, cleaned. Some have chemicals that have been put in there, mostly, hydrogen peroxide, things like that. But, cards, especially, I'm going to use the Goodwin Champion cards because these are the ones that I know the best. And I've had over 100 of these cards in my life. And I know a lot about them, and I know, the ones are in scrapbooks. So normally, when a card is put in a scrapbook and it's taken out with glue and it's pulled out, that's what it'll look like. This card hasn't been soaked, as you can see. If it would have been soaked, it would have come out. You can see it, but that's torn out of the book because it was glued on there. And again, the glue, I'm using this example because back in these days, specific glues were used and different glues were used during different times. So cards will be affected differently when soaking, especially if you add different type of chemicals on there. These cards are kind of thick, so it's different than soaking more thinner cards that are almost paper. The Cuban Deportivo cards, you could soak those very easily because it's very, the glue on that is very water soluble glue. And I'm going to show you another one here. And this is, again, an old one that has been soaked here. But this one, I believe, was soaked probably with water. So you soak it with water, and I'll show you the fronts of some of these, and you can see a little bit more detail. But I want to show you just the backs because that's important. And when you soak it with water, it doesn't come out as white, as clean, and the stain, the glue stain, still remains, and you'll still get a little spots of paper loss possible because you didn't really. This one was probably just soaked in distilled water or something, or may have just come right off because of the being so old, the glue dried out. But I don't believe in this one, and I'll show you later why, that this was any chemicals involved. And this one I know, the next one, I know that it definitely was soaked and definitely was done. And it was done by a professional card trimmer, soaker. This card was done by Moser. And you see that glue stain that's there, come back. Now this card here was soaked with a chemical. And when I first got this card, that stain was not visible. Was not visible at all. And I'll show you why. Because it was sent right after it was done to PSA. And PSA gave it a grade of a 6. Because PSA also did not see the stain in the back. It wasn't there. It had been removed with some chemical and water, and it turned the card white. And after time, that stain actually came back. So I'll show you that, and I'll show you why. You can see differences a little bit from the back. This one is right out of the scrapbook the way it came out, no soaking at all. This probably was soaked in water. That's why it didn't come out completely, and it didn't come off the scrapbook completely either. This was professionally soaked and to get a good grade. And this was not there, and it came back. This is about over 5 years later. So I'll show you what happens when you do that. So since I've got this, I'm going to show you another example of this card, and this is the highest example graded by PSA, and this is an 8. This is the best card known to exist of this Mitchell Pugilist card. It's the highest graded in both SGC and PSA. So if you look at the difference, you can see how white that card is. Now you say, well, it's probably been cleaned, and yeah, it's definitely been cleaned, but I have other examples, and I'm going to share another example of another one that has not been cleaned. And here is the back. This is what the back should look like in these cards right here. That's what the back needs to look like. This is the card that came right out of the pack. You can see that stain just came back. It's been doctored. When you look at the fronts, here's the highest graded in SGC, a 7, the best SGC card, and I have the best PSA. But look at the difference there. You see the card. You may say, well, that 6 looks a lot brighter, but that's not really it. If you look at it in person, the detail, the colors, look at the shirt. Look at that shirt there. Look at the details. A lot of those details are gone. Look at up here, and look at this one here. So it loses a little bit of paint also because it has to. It kind of changes it. Look at the hands here. Look at the hands. See? Check it out. Let's check out the 8, the best graded example that exists. You see the difference? It's easier to tell when you look at him in person, and you can see the difference between the 3. These 2 that were original in packs, that's how they came out of the tobacco packs. And the 3rd one that has been altered. In person, you could see it better. So this is the highest graded example in SGC of the Mitchell card, and this is the highest graded example of the PSA in the Mitchell card. And this is the 6 that has been dipped. You dip. So I wanted to share that, and you can see the backs. The backs of these, they're not going to be that white, but they're not going to have any type of, this. So technically, this card, when they graded it, they saw that it did not have a stain. So when they didn't see the stain in the back, they gave it a PSA gave it a grade of a 6. Not knowing that these cards, if you put one up against the other, they're not this white in the borders. The details are different. If you put one up against the other one, you could tell the difference. A real one, undipped, not altering, straight out of the packs, versus one that has been altered. And so here's the other one, and this was graded properly, because this was graded with that stain already showing, and that grades a 2. Now, it's a perfect card, because why? It was in a it was in the album, and that's why it survived over 130 years. And it has that stain, so this should be a 2. So bottom line is, this card should also be a 2, because cards that have been glued and have glue stains in the back should be a 2. And that's a huge miss by PSA. And again, oops, sorry about that. And again, you know, I'll show you this other one, and you've seen this a million times. Was another one that was just pulled right out of the pack, and you could see the backs. You see how the backs are on these, on the real ones. See how the backs are. This one was not put in water at all, and just ripped right out of the book, you know. But again, you could see the beautiful picture and color, and that's about as white as a border as you're gonna get in those cards. I mean, that's, you know, here's a 7. You see those borders? That's about as white as you're gonna get on those borders. These were right in scrapbooks. This was in a scrapbook. This was in a scrapbook, and this was in a scrapbook. So I wanted to share that with you, comparing it to what's happening there with altered cards, and what happens after a while with some of those cards that have been soaked, have been chemically treated. You just don't know, and you won't find out until later. You know, and I found out the hard way, because I bought this card from PWCC back in the day when Brett Huggins and Betsy were running the show over there. They were selling a lot of trimmed and altered cards from Moser and other trimmers and alterers and card care people. And basically, you know, it was all in the Blowout forums. It was all put out there, and everybody could see, and there were some cards that were put out too. So when I contacted PWCC, you know, Brent sent me to Betsy. I talked to Betsy, sent her emails, documented what I could. It linked to Blowout forum stuff, and basically, you know, she said, you know, no, you got to prove it to us. Of course, they probably couldn't see the stain as well as I could see it, and the stain is getting, you know, it's coming out more and more as you see it over the years. That stain, you know, it's just coming out more and more and more. It's coming back out. So anyway, that's the deal. And you know, you're probably thinking, Orlando, why don't you sell that? I won't sell that. I know it's basically a bad card. At least that's not a 6. So I will probably take it to PSA at the National, show them that and say, hey, is that a 6? You know, maybe they'll learn a lesson. I'll take one of these guys so they can compare what a real one looks like and what an altered one looks like. So, anyway, guys, thanks for the time. I know it's a long video. I talked a little bit too much, but I wanted to share my experience and give you guys a good look at what altering can do to cards over the long term. They may look beautiful right in the beginning and, you know, be a 2 and come out a 6, but then turn back into a 2. So you never know. You know, that's what I wanted to share with you guys, my experiences. Have an awesome day. This is Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and I'll catch you on the next one.